Today, everything fell into place. Because of my wife's infidelity, I found the key this morning, small, silver, unremarkable at first glance. It had slipped from Anna's purse when she reached for her phone, landing soundlessly onto the kitchen floor. If I hadn't been standing right there, I might have missed it. I picked it up without a word, rolling the cool metal between my fingers as she turned her back to pour coffee. "Did you drop something?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She turned, her blue eyes flickering to the object in my hand. A single heartbeat passed before she smiled, too quickly, too practiced. "Oh, that? Just an old key from my gym locker," she said lightly, reaching for it. I pulled it back just an inch, just enough to see the tension creep into her shoulders. "You don't go to the gym?" The pause was barely noticeable, but I caught it. The way her smile faltered before she recovered. "Right," she said, laughing like I had caught her in some harmless joke. "It's from ages ago. Must have forgotten to toss it." I could have left it at that. I could have swallowed the growing knot in my stomach, kissed her on the cheek, and let the moment pass like I had so many times before. Because that's what I did, wasn't it? Ignored the inconsistencies, the unexplained late nights, the sudden interest in perfume she never wore around me. But not this time. I nodded, placing the key on the counter, watching as she picked it up with careful fingers. She slipped it into her purse as if it meant nothing, as if she wasn't calculating her every move. And in that moment, I knew. Anna was hiding something, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. That key wouldn't leave my mind. It was a simple thing, really. Just a key. But it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I watched Anna the rest of the morning, studying the way she moved, how she avoided my eyes just a fraction longer than usual. She was calm, too calm. I'd seen her flustered before, rushing around the house looking for misplaced things. But today, she was careful, calculated. By the time she left for her charity brunch, another one of those high society events where socialites pretended to care about the less fortunate while sipping champagne, I had already made up my mind. I was going to follow her. Not today. No, that would be too obvious. But soon. For the first time in our marriage, I questioned everything. The moments I had once dismissed, her distant stares at dinner, the unexplained absences, the phone calls she always took in another room, suddenly painted a different picture. A picture of a woman who was keeping secrets. I thought back to when we met. Anna was magnetic. A woman who could turn heads just by entering a room, her laughter effortless, her confidence intoxicating. She had been my greatest love, my greatest obsession. When we married, I believed we were untouchable, a power couple envied by everyone around us. But had I been blind all along? That evening, when she came home, she kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed, like she wasn't carrying a lie inside her perfectly tailored purse. "Did you miss me?" she asked, her voice playful as she draped her coat over the chair. I smiled. The same way I always did. The same way I had for years. I always do. She didn't notice the way my grip tightened around my glass. She didn't see the storm brewing behind my eyes. But soon, she would. The key stayed with me. Not physically. No. Anna had tucked it away, believing the moment had passed. But in my mind, it lingered, whispering questions I could no longer silence. That night, I barely slept. I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow, steady rhythm of her breathing. My wife, my beautiful, deceitful wife. At some point, I rolled onto my side, watching her in the dim glow of the city lights slipping through our bedroom window. She looked peaceful, innocent even. And yet, I knew now, this was the face of a woman hiding something. I wasn't stupid. I knew that if I confronted her now, she'd twist the truth, paint over the cracks, make me feel like the paranoid husband imagining things. No, I needed something solid. So, the next morning, I did what any man would do when faced with the unraveling of his marriage. I followed her. Anna had a schedule, a carefully crafted routine that made her predictable. Mondays were brunch with the charity board. Wednesdays, she went shopping with her inner circle. Fridays, she had her spa days, a few hours of supposed self-care that left her glowing when she returned home. But where did she really go? That Friday, I waited for her to leave. She kissed me goodbye, the scent of her expensive perfume lingering as she walked out the door. I gave her a 5-minute head start before I grabbed my keys and followed. I kept my distance, my grip tightening on the wheel as I trailed her through the city. She didn't head to the spa. I didn't expect her to. Instead, she drove across town to a hotel. A sleek, 5-star hotel. One of those places where men in tailored suits met their mistresses behind closed doors, where affairs weren't just suspected but expected. I watched from across the street as she stepped out of the car, her coat cinched at the waist, her hair swept back in elegant waves. She walked through the entrance like she belonged there. And then, just before the doors shut behind her, she reached into her purse and pulled out the key. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. That was it. Proof. She wasn't meeting a friend, wasn't indulging in some secret solo getaway. This was deliberate. This was a woman walking into deception with practiced ease. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, 1,000 emotions I couldn't untangle. Rage, pain, a strange, hollow kind of relief. I could storm in after her, demand answers, tear apart the illusion right then and there. But I didn't. Because if Anna thought she could outplay me, she was wrong. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't go in. Not yet. Instead, I parked a block away and waited. I wasn't sure how long she would stay, but I knew I wasn't leaving until I had seen enough. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared at the grand entrance of the hotel, waiting for my perfect, deceitful wife to reappear. 15 minutes passed, then 20, and then I saw him. A man. He walked through the glass doors with the kind of confidence that came naturally to men who were used to getting what they wanted. Well-dressed, younger than me, sharp-jawed with that effortless arrogance that came with wealth. He didn't glance around, didn't hesitate. He knew exactly where he was going. Straight to her. I felt it in my gut before I even saw them together. He disappeared inside. My hands clenched into fists. I could picture it now. Anna greeting him with that radiant smile, the same one she had given me countless times before. Maybe she'd touch his arm lightly as she led him upstairs. Maybe she'd laugh at something he whispered into her ear. I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the revolving doors, waiting. And then, an idea struck me. I reached into my glove compartment, pulling out my phone. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed in a name I hadn't thought I'd ever need. Darren Cole, private investigator. I met Darren years ago at a business function. He was the kind of guy who knew how to disappear in a crowd, how to get information without anyone realizing they were being watched. I never thought I'd have a use for his services. Until now. I hit dial. James, his voice came through, groggy and slow, like he'd just woken up. Didn't expect to hear from you. I need a favor, I said, my voice tight. It's urgent. Silence. Then a slow, knowing exhale. Tell me what you need. I told him everything. The key, the hotel, the man. I want proof, I said, my jaw tightening. I want to know exactly how long this has been going on. Who he is. Everything. Darren didn't ask questions. Consider it done, he said. I'll start today. I hung up, my grip tightening around the phone. I wasn't going to storm into that hotel, wasn't going to make a scene. No, I was going to be patient. Because when the truth came out, I wanted Anna to have nowhere to run. I sat back in my seat, watching the hotel doors. 30 more minutes passed before she reappeared. She stepped out first alone. Her coat was pristine, her hair still perfect. She didn't look flustered. She didn't look guilty. She looked content. A few moments later, he followed. He wasn't as careful. He checked his phone, smirking at whatever message had just appeared on his screen. Then he walked away, never once looking back. Anna got into her car and drove home. And I sat there, breathing through the fury burning in my chest, knowing that I had just witnessed the beginning of the end. Darren didn't take long. The next evening, I was sitting in my office, staring blankly at my computer screen when my phone vibrated. A message from him. Got something. Call me. I stepped onto the balcony before dialing, the cool night air doing little to ease the fire burning inside me. Darren picked up on the second ring. Tell me. He exhaled. You sure you're ready for this? Just say it. The guy's name is Daniel Carter. I frowned. The name meant nothing to me. Some random guy? Some rich asshole with too much confidence and not enough morals? That would almost be easier to stomach. Who the hell is Daniel Carter? I asked, pacing. Silence. And then Darren said the words that knocked the air from my lungs. Your old friend, Daniel Carter. From high school. I stopped moving. No, that wasn't possible. Daniel Carter. The same Daniel who used to crash at my place after late-night parties. The same Daniel who sat beside me in math class, copying my homework like it was an unspoken rule. My best friend. The guy who knew everything about me. My dreams, my fears, my goddamn wedding vows. And now he was the one in a hotel room with my wife. My grip tightened around the phone. How long? Darren hesitated. At least a year. A year. I ran a hand down my face, forcing down the bile rising in my throat. Anna and I had just celebrated our anniversary 2 months ago. A romantic getaway, expensive gifts, whispered promises of forever. All while she was sleeping with him. You have proof? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Photos, timestamps, text logs. He even booked that hotel room under his own name. Cocky bastard doesn't even try to hide it. I laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. That was Daniel, all right. Always so sure of himself. Always so convinced he could do whatever the hell he wanted without consequences. Not this time. Darren's voice softened slightly. Listen, man. I've seen a lot of this in my line of work. But this one's personal. You want me to keep digging? I didn't even hesitate. Yes. Find everything. And Darren? Yeah. I want them to regret this. I hung up. My heartbeat was a steady, violent thrum in my ears. My mind raced with 100 different ways I could handle this. 100 different ways I could make them pay. I stepped back inside, into the house I had built with my wife. The house that now felt like a prison of lies. Anna was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine. She turned, smiling at me like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just been with him. How was your day? She asked casually, taking a sip. I forced a smile. The kind of smile I had perfected in business meetings. The kind that hid everything I was truly thinking. Oh, you know, I said, my voice smooth. Just another day. Because she didn't know. Not yet. But soon, Anna would understand exactly what it felt like to be blindsided. And Daniel? He was going to wish he had never looked at my wife. Revenge isn't about anger. It's about control. I spent the next few days pretending. Pretending I was the same husband Anna had always known. Pretending I didn't know her dirty little secret. Pretending I wasn't planning the perfect way to destroy her and Daniel both. She didn't suspect a thing. At night, she curled up beside me, her body warm against mine, her breathing steady. It made me sick, knowing she had given herself to him, knowing she came home and laid beside me like nothing had changed. But something had changed. Me. Darren kept feeding me information, and with every new detail, I crafted my plan. Daniel was reckless, arrogant. He had never learned caution, never thought he had to. That was going to be his downfall. Anna? She was more careful. She covered her tracks well. But she had one weakness. She cared what people thought. She had spent years building her image. The perfect wife, the perfect socialite, the perfect life. Exposing her in front of the people who mattered most to her? That would break her. So I started laying the groundwork. It began with little things. Subtle moves she wouldn't notice. I suggested we throw a dinner party. We haven't entertained in a while, I said over breakfast, watching her reaction. Why not have a little gathering? She hesitated, probably debating whether she had the energy to keep up the facade. Then she smiled. That sounds wonderful. Of course it did. Anna loved playing hostess. Loved showing off our home, our marriage. I made sure to invite all the right people, her closest friends, the ones who idolized her. People from our social circle, influential enough to make sure word would spread. And of course, Daniel. I wanted him right there when it all came crashing down. Over the next few days, I fed Anna little hints that I was busy. A few late nights at the office, a sudden weekend trip planned for work. Just enough to give her confidence. To make her feel like she could slip away to be with Daniel without suspicion. And sure enough, She did. She didn't know I had installed a GPS tracker on her car. She didn't know I had access to her messages. She didn't know that every step she took was now mine to control. The night before the party, I watched as she drove straight to the same hotel. Same routine. Same betrayal. Except this time, I was waiting. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I already had what I needed. The security footage. Darren had pulled a few strings, gotten me access to the hotel's surveillance cameras. I had the perfect shot. Anna and Daniel entering the elevator together, her body pressed close to his as they laughed about something, completely unaware that their moment of intimacy was now mine to use. I transferred the video to a USB drive, and then I prepared for the party. Tomorrow, Anna and Daniel would walk into our home thinking they were untouchable. They had no idea they were about to become the entertainment for the evening. The night of the party, I played my role to perfection. I greeted our guests with an easy smile, shook hands, poured drinks. I laughed at jokes, made small talk, even kissed Anna on the cheek in front of everyone. She looked stunning in a black dress that clung to her figure, her eyes gleaming under the chandelier's glow. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought she was the perfect wife. But I did know better. Daniel arrived late, as expected. He had always loved making an entrance. He stepped inside like he belonged there, like he hadn't been sneaking around behind my back with my wife. I gripped my whiskey glass a little tighter, feeling the weight of the USB drive in my pocket. The key to their destruction. Anna beamed at him from across the room. It was subtle, quick, just a flicker of something most people wouldn't notice. But I did. She hadn't expected him to come tonight. That much was obvious. She recovered quickly, though, gliding over to greet him, placing a delicate hand on his arm. I watched as they exchanged quiet words, as Daniel smirked, whispering something into her ear that made her bite her lip. They thought they were being discreet. They had no idea. Dinner was served, and I let the conversation flow naturally. I let Anna and Daniel think they had gotten away with it for one more hour, one more sip of wine, one more forkful of expensive steak. And then, when the moment was right, I stood. Before we wrap up the evening, I wanted to share something special with you all, I said, smiling. A little surprise. Anna turned to me, confused. What surprise? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for the remote and dimmed the lights. The room fell into a hush, anticipation thick in the air. I clicked play, and there, projected onto the massive screen in our dining room, was the hotel security footage. Anna and Daniel, entering the elevator together, her arm around his waist, his hand slipping down her back. Laughter, a kiss, a betrayal made painfully real in front of everyone who mattered to her. The room went silent. Then, a single gasp. Anna shot up from her chair.
James.
Sit down. My voice was calm, controlled, dangerous. She froze. Daniel's face drained of color. He looked around the room, at the stunned faces of our friends, at the way whispers were already spreading like wildfire. His arrogance crumbled in an instant. Anna turned to me, her eyes wide with something between horror and desperation. It's not what it looks like. A laugh escaped me. A real, raw, bitter laugh. Really? I gestured toward the screen, where they were now disappearing into a hotel room together. Because it looks like my wife has been screwing my best friend. No one said a word. The perfect Anna, the queen of our social circle, was now nothing more than a scandal waiting to explode. I leaned back, taking a slow sip of my whiskey, savoring the moment. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said coolly, standing. I know I did. Then I walked out, leaving them to drown in the wreckage. This was only the beginning. I left them there, Anna, Daniel, and the wreckage of their betrayal laid bare for everyone to see. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I took a deep breath, letting the weight of what I had done settle in. I should have felt satisfied, maybe even relieved, but all I felt was cold. The night had been perfect, every detail executed exactly as I planned. The humiliation, the shock, the destruction of the illusion Anna had worked so hard to maintain. So why did I still feel hollow? My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Anna, 8 missed calls. I let it ring again, ignoring it. She had nothing to say that I wanted to hear. Instead, I got into my car and drove. I didn't go home. That house, the place where I had once felt safe, felt like a crime scene now. Everything inside it had been tainted by her, by him. So I drove with no real destination in mind, the city lights blurring past me as my thoughts spiraled. Would she come home? Would she try to explain? Beg for forgiveness? Would Daniel? The thought of seeing him, of hearing whatever excuse he might try to spit out, made my grip tighten on the wheel. I pulled into a small parking lot near the waterfront, cutting the engine. The silence was deafening. And then, my phone buzzed again. A text this time. Anna, James, please. Just talk to me. I stared at the screen for a long moment before I typed back. Me? There's nothing left to say. A few seconds passed. Then another message. Anna, please, I need to explain. Can we meet? Just us. No one else. I leaned back in my seat, exhaling slowly. She was desperate now, grasping for any chance to fix what she had shattered. I wasn't sure what I wanted. Closure? A final confrontation? Or just to see the regret on her face one last time? I stared out at the dark water, considering my next move. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Anna wasn't the only one who was going to lose everything. Because I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I agreed to meet her. Not because I needed an explanation. There was nothing she could say that would undo what she had done. But I wanted to see her face. I wanted to hear her lie to me one last time. She chose a quiet spot, a small, upscale lounge on the outskirts of the city, far from the gossiping eyes of our social circle. It was the kind of place where secrets were exchanged over expensive cocktails, where people pretended to be something they weren't. Fitting. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting in a dimly lit corner, nursing a glass of red wine. She looked different. Not the polished, picture-perfect Anna I had built a life with. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the glass to her lips. Her mascara was smudged. For the first time in years, she looked human. She looked scared. I slid into the seat across from her, resting my hands on the table. She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to find the right words. I wasn't going to help her. Finally, she spoke. James. I raised a hand, stopping her. Don't waste my time with an apology. She swallowed hard, setting her glass down. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good. Her breath hitched, but she pushed forward. I need you to know it wasn't about you. It was never about you. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Oh, so you weren't sleeping with my best friend as a personal attack? That makes it so much better. Tears welled in her eyes. I was lost, James. I don't even know when it started, when I stopped being the woman you fell in love with. It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to hurt you. I leaned forward, my voice quiet but sharp as a blade. You did hurt me, Anna. For over a year, you looked me in the eye and lied. Every time you kissed me, every time you told me you loved me, it was a lie. And Daniel? You let him betray me, too. Was that part of the fun? She flinched, gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing holding her together. I never wanted to destroy us. I sat back, exhaling slowly. Then why did you? She hesitated. But she didn't have an answer. Not a real one. She had everything. Love, security, a life people envied. And still, it hadn't been enough. She wiped at her eyes, her voice shaking. I'll sign whatever you want. The divorce. I won't fight you on anything. But please, James, don't let this be how we end. Don't let this be the only thing that defines us. I stared at her, at the woman I had once built my life around, and realized something. She was already nothing to me. I stood, sliding a small envelope across the table. Inside are the terms of the divorce, I said. I made sure you'll be left with exactly what you deserve. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. James. I turned to leave. She called after me, her voice desperate. Can we talk again? After some time? I paused just long enough to glance over my shoulder. No, Anna. We're done. And then I walked out. Anna was out of my life. Now, it was Daniel's turn. I could have gone the easy route, just cutting him off, erasing him from my life like he never existed. But that wasn't enough. He had taken everything from me. My trust, my friendship, my marriage. He had laughed behind my back, touched what wasn't his, walked into my home like he wasn't a traitor. No, Daniel didn't get to walk away unscathed. I started with his career. Daniel had spent years building his image as a rising businessman, making all the right connections, rubbing elbows with the wealthy and influential. His reputation was everything to him. So I shattered it. I leaked the hotel footage. Not to the media. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, I made sure it found its way into the inboxes of his colleagues, his investors, the people who mattered most in his world. A video of him, stepping into a hotel room with his best friend's wife? Not exactly the image of a trustworthy businessman. His phone calls to me started that same afternoon. I didn't answer. I wanted him to feel the panic. Then, I hit him where it really hurt. His money? Daniel had a few investments I knew about, some of which relied on my connections. So I made a few calls. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal. Just a quiet push here, a whispered word there. A few of his backers started pulling out. One of his biggest deals stalled. And then, the final blow. His fiancée. Oh yes, Daniel had a fiancée. A beautiful, sweet woman named Claire. She had no idea what kind of man she was about to marry. So I made sure she found out. I sent her an anonymous package. Inside were the photos, the messages, undeniable proof of Daniel's betrayal. It didn't take long for her to call off the engagement. Daniel lost everything in a matter of days. His business deals fell apart. His social circle turned against him. And the woman who had loved him? Gone. Only then did I pick up his call. "James," he breathed, his voice ragged. "Listen, man, I smiled. "Lost something, Danny?" He was silent for a moment. Then, in a broken whisper, "You destroyed me." I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. "No, Daniel. You destroyed yourself." I ended the call. And just like that, my revenge was complete. But I wasn't done yet. Because now, it was time to rebuild. For the first time in a long time, I woke up and felt free. The weight of Anna's lies, of Daniel's betrayal, of the life I had been trapped in, it was all gone. I had burned it to the ground, and now, all that was left was the smoldering remains of the man I used to be. And maybe that was a good thing. I moved out of the house the next week. It wasn't a home anymore. It was just a collection of walls soaked in memories I didn't want. I let Anna keep it. Let her sit there, surrounded by the wreckage of what she had thrown away. I didn't look back. Instead, I focused on rebuilding, on reclaiming the parts of myself I had lost over the years. I threw myself into work, but not in the same mindless way I had before. I started making decisions for me, not for the life I had built around Anna. I cut off people who were only there because of her. I reconnected with old friends, ones who hadn't been fooled by the perfect image we had projected. And, somewhere in the chaos, I found peace. One night, I was sitting in a quiet bar, nursing a whiskey, when someone slid into the seat next to me. "Didn't think I'd see you here," a familiar voice said. I looked up, and there she was. Claire, Daniel's ex-fiancée. She looked different from the last time I had seen her. Stronger, sharper. There was no sadness in her eyes, only something I recognized. Rebirth. She lifted her glass, smirking slightly. "Here's to dodging bullets." I clinked mine against hers. "To new beginnings." And just like that, the past started to fade. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I knew one thing. I was finally in control of my own story. It took 6 months before Anna reached out again. By then, everything had changed. My divorce was finalized. Daniel had vanished from the city, his reputation in ruins. Claire and I had stayed in touch, not as lovers, not yet, but as two people who had survived the same storm. I was moving forward. And yet, Anna still clung to the past. She asked to meet. One last time. I didn't need to, but I agreed. Not for closure. I had found that on my own. But because I wanted to see her for what she truly was. Not the woman I had loved, not the wife I had trusted, but the stranger she had become. We met in a small cafe downtown. She looked different, thinner, her eyes duller. The confidence she had once carried so effortlessly was gone, replaced by something else. regret. James, she said softly. I just stared at her, waiting. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she continued. I don't expect it, but I need you to know. I miss you. I took a sip of my coffee, letting her words settle between us. I don't miss you, I said simply. She flinched. I loved you, Anna. I gave you everything, and you threw it away. Not just me, us. And for what? For a man who destroyed himself the moment I turned my attention to him. I shook my head. You don't miss me, Anna. You miss the life you had before you ruined it. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. I had spent too long grieving her. I wasn't going to waste another second. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, standing. But it won't be me. And just like that, I walked away. No anger, no heartbreak, just a clean, final goodbye. As I stepped outside, the air felt lighter. The past was behind me. And the future? For the first time in a long time, it was mine. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.